Hi, Ben Pearson, the Roaster Tracker, and today I want to continue my series about talking of the various types of power. And the next one we're going to talk about is wind power. Now, wind power, again, doesn't have a fuel, so we don't have to talk about how the fuel is created. But it does involve the construction of a number of materials. The biggest things that are used are some kind of concrete, which is used in pretty much every form of electricity. It's a relatively small amount of land, although the area around it does have to be relatively flat. So you could build some of these in the middle of a farm field and have almost no impact versus just having the farm there in the first place. And you also have the metal parts, the structure that's going up to the top is metal, the electrical generation parts of it are metal, and you have the blades. Now, the blades are some form of advanced polymers that are extremely tough. These have to be built to withstand hurricane force winds. They're actually really, really difficult to dispose of. And in fact, it's a growing problem. The lifetime of a wind plant is about 25 years or so. At the end of the life cycle, everything but the blades can be recycled pretty easily. But these blades are actually a pretty serious problem. And currently, what they'll do is they'll cut them into a couple of pieces and ship them off to some of the very few landfills that will accept them. And they are buried under some amount of dirt. Now, they're not particularly toxic. The problem is just what do you do with these blades? It's something that has to be considered. But there's a lot of people who are out there trying to figure out a better use for these blades. But it's still something worth talking about. The main ecological problem that can happen with wind power is the death of birds. Now, the number of birds that die due to wind power is actually quite low, but it is still somewhat significant, and it happens at a different spot than normal. An often quoted statistic is that house cats are far more likely to kill birds than wind power. And that is true. But a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, the amount of wind power is only a small portion of the electricity that we're using right now, although it is rapidly growing. And secondly, the birds that tend to die by a wind turbine are really high up in the sky at a spot where you wouldn't really think there would be a huge impact. Now, this can be properly mitigated. The biggest known contributor to this is some locations in California, where they actually built one of these along the migration path of some birds, and that's a really bad idea. They need to do proper studies to determine where the best place is to place these. And if you place them in an area where there's not a lot of wildlife, then you're going to have so much better results and you're not going to cause any issues. It's actually somewhat of a well-known fact that some endangered species, the bald eagle, has been killed a number of times, and there are actually some specific exemptions to killing bald eagles accidentally through the generation of wind power, which kind of rubs me a little bit off. But it's something to at least consider, and it can be mitigated if you build it in the proper location. There's one other often cited issue with wind power, and the truth is that this is a problem with every form of power to some extent or another. And that is the use of a gas called sulfur hexifloride, SF6. Sulfur hexifloride is a very stable molecule. It does not exist in nature. It is so stable that when you have electrical currents that are very, very high power in its vicinity, it won't spark through there because it's so stable. So this gas is used and placed inside of many very high-powered switches to prevent some kind of a basically lightning happening within the switch, which could cause a short, which could cause some major, major issues. That's really bad. We don't want that to happen. So this gas makes a lot of those types of things quite easy. But there are some problems. This gas is actually the most potent form of a greenhouse gas that is known to exist. It's something like 37,000 times more efficient at absorbing greenhouse gases than carbon dioxide. That's insane. But the good news is it doesn't have to be used in large doses. Because it is used in these switching environments, it does have a very slow leak rate. And it's actually monitored, because if enough of this leaks out, then you're a lot more likely to cause short circuits. So even for notwithstanding the greenhouse gas problem, then it's something to be concerned about. But it could potentially have some issues, and it's something that we should be considering alternatives. Now, the reason why this is a problem with wind power is each one of the wind turbines will need its own power system to prevent this. And the wind power is pretty small as a whole. You tend to have up to maybe 5 megawatts for a single tower. For comparison, a nuclear power plant can be almost 200 times more power generated than from a single wind turbine. And so you're going to have a lot more of these switches. Now, because they're relatively low, it's possible that we could use some alternatives to this gas to be able to detect this, and there are some alternatives that are being worked, but it's something worth considering. Total aside note, the more I look into this sulfur hexifloride, the more I think it'd be really fun to manufacture some of that and put it on Mars. It could make terraforming the planet a lot easier. We'll see what happens with that. There is still going to be some use of this, but it's not something that can be avoided. Overall, though, wind power is a pretty clean form of electricity, and we will talk more how it compares to all of the other forms of electricity out there in another video. Thank you guys very much for joining me. Let me know whatever questions or comments you guys have, and until next time, keep on tracking. Take care.